Just before we start, if anyone hasn't yet switched off mobile phones, just to check and make sure they're off. Looks like we're okay. Great. Thank you so much. So welcome everyone to this service for Torgils Louis Sorlie. My name is Julian Bamford and it is an honour to be here this afternoon as celebrant. On behalf of Alma and all the Sorlie family and their partners, thank you each for your thoughtful kindness over these recent days and being here with them this afternoon. Family and friends, those who've travelled quite a way, some coming down from the country, and those who of course could not be here, and to everyone watching later via the video link in Norway, the Sorlie family and the Calvo family, and here in Australia, family and friends over in Western Australia, and many good friends up in Queensland. Also, I'd like to acknowledge the former Consul General of the Norwegian Consulate and the current Vice President of the Friends of Norway, Mr. Tom Paulson, for being here this afternoon as well. And to all who've sent their warm and kind wishes and sympathies over these recent days, with texts, Facebook messages, emails, cards, lots of flowers, about which Alma said their number and thoughtfulness has been overwhelming. Thank you each for being a part of this time to celebrate Torgils' life and the times that he shared and spent with you, his family and his friends. To say farewell and to honour and to celebrate the good man he was, with his warm smile, his love for life, his sense of humour, his resilience and integrity. He could be serious when he had to as well. He was proud of his Norwegian heritage, while from the day he set foot here in Australia, he was, Elmer said, always very Aussie, embracing all the country had to offer. Torgils was devoted to you, his family, enjoyed his work. He loved he and Elmer's very many travel adventures together, and always wanted and worked for and worked towards the very best for you all. A sincere thank you from Elma also and her family to each of the staff at the Bayes Aged Care in Hastings, and to everyone who looked after Torgils with great kindness and understanding while he was in their care. And last but certainly not least, as you may have seen on arriving, donations for the Royal Flying Doctor Service as a gift in loving memory of Torgils will be warmly appreciated by all who benefited. So if you'd like to do that, you're most welcome to. Once again, a warm thank you and a welcome here this afternoon. And whatever the circumstances, our time of life, our age or our relationship, and the very deep connection that's brought each of you here today, for all of us confronting the end of a life, someone we loved, we're dearly loved by, and shared so many life experiences with, Torgils' passing for each of you brings with it the very deepest of sadness and of grief. Life is precious and very fragile. Torgils passed away quietly at Bayes Aged Care on Tuesday 2 weeks ago, the 14th of June 2022. His life at an end completed. May he be at peace. As for life's passing, its end and that of his own, Torgils said his prayers every night before sleeping, and as a child he'd been brought up in the Lutheran Church in Norway. While, as for a time such as this, Torgils, Jan Erik said, always liked a gathering. He would have been pleased and humbled to know that you, his family and friends, would be here together, both in the chapel and those watching later via the link, to remember him and to celebrate his life and all that he did by telling a little of his story. And then, of course, to go and have a drink or maybe a cuppa and some food together and to catch up and share some of your own stories of time spent with him. So now, to do that, to tell Torgils' story and share some reflections of him and a reading, I'd like to invite his son, Jan Erik, to speak in loving tribute to his dad. Jan Erik.
Thank you, Julian, for that very nice introduction. I'll be reading. Alison is my number 2 in case I fail. So let's see how we go. Well, as some of you may know, Dad's life started with a bang, quite literally, on the 8th of January 1937. The timing of his birth came a bit unexpectedly, and the story goes that he was dropped on his head. I'm not sure how much of this is family legend or how much is true. In any case, he was child number 4 out of 5, following older siblings Randi, Jan and Jack. He was subsequently followed by younger sister Anne-Marie. Dad was also the last surviving sibling out of the 5. The family lived in a modest 2-bedroom apartment in Oslo and had to make do the best they could. His father, Armand, was a mason by trade and did his best to support the growing family. His mum, Hjerdis, also worked when she could in order to make ends meet, but being such a large family meant there was plenty of home chores for the kids to do, including helping with the meals. Dad started school at age 6, and back in those days the kids had to do school kitchen duties, cooking, etc. The schools in Norway provided breakfast for the students, as there were many struggling families during wartime. And this initiative ensured that the kids got at least one good meal per day. Even though it was wartime, city kids were always sent to summer school camps in the countryside. Dad would often talk about the positive impact these camps had on him. He needed to learn how to swim really early in life, as the family had a bit of a boat. Apparently, swimming lessons consisted of being tossed into the water from a low bridge. It seemed to work because they all survived it, all 5 of them. Another regular happening was the air raid sirens, which would trigger an immediate dousing of lights, closing of curtains, followed by an escape to the basement to seek shelter. They lived in a valley, and the enemy fighter planes would fly up this valley at frighteningly low altitudes to avoid radar detection by the Norwegian defence. Dad would actually always shudder when recounting this story. When peacetime came, he became a scout, which is pretty much the same as it's always been, with orienteering and outdoor skills, etc. The exception was some very long bicycle excursions from the northern tip of Denmark riding through to Copenhagen, several hundred kilometres, camping all the way. But since Denmark is quite flat, this type of ride is quite feasible, unlike Norway, where it would be impossible. Dad excelled at sport, apparently, competing in various disciplines including hockey, ice hockey, running, swimming, skiing, soccer and boxing. He did well too, bringing home many trophies for the mantelpiece, and Mum's got plenty of them at home still. He was also junior boxing champion of Oslo at age 17, 18. So he was quite accomplished in his younger days. As a teenager, he had aspirations to become a pilot, which required higher education the family simply could not afford. So at 14 and a half, his mum arranged an apprenticeship in the field of refrigeration so that he could earn a wage and pay for his own education and contribute to the family as well. By the time he was 18, he had completed the apprenticeship, and to further his education, he went to sea for almost 3 years, sailing all over the world to many exotic locations, though he never quite made it to Australia. Also by now, the aspirations to become a pilot had been put on the back burner. It was during this time in the Merchant Navy that he became pen friends with a young 16-year-old named Alma Calvo. This pen friendship continued for some 2.5 years, after which the letters slowed and eventually stopped in both directions. Mum was working in Sweden at the time and Dad was sailing. So perhaps the tyranny of distance and new life directions for them both contributed to this. After his time at sea, he returned home to Norway and went straight into national service. Then he found love around 1958 and got married to Evelyn and welcomed Roy in 1959, followed by Anita a few years later. During the same period, Mum had also returned to Norway, also found love and welcomed me into the world, again in 1959. By 1965, Dad's marriage was over, whilst Mum's relationship had also ended. Then, one day in January 1966, Dad happened to walk into his office at Kelvinator and overheard someone talking about an Alma Calvo. One can only imagine how his ears pricked up, as this is not a common name. Well, they say it's not common, but both our mothers are named Alma, which is interesting, isn't it? He made a beeline across the office and found out that the conversation related to engaging a reliable babysitter. He then set about investigating whether this was indeed the same person he'd had as a pen friend all those years before. But he was also conscious about not wanting to intrude, as he had no idea about what Mum's situation was. After discovering the coast was clear, the initial communication was a letter from Dad to Mum followed by Mum phoning Dad, followed soon after by their very first meeting over a cup of coffee in February 1966, 11 years after first becoming pen friends in 1955. A few months later, Dad was transferred with work to Denmark to set up a subsidiary office. They continued corresponding, and as Mum's summer holidays approached in June, Mum and I were invited to spend the summer holidays in Denmark with him, which included visits to Tivoli, which was amazing and I still remember it, and a trip to the island of Bornholm. After returning to Norway, the relationship between them continued to blossom over the following months, culminating in their wedding at the Oslo Town Hall on the 17th of December 1966. After which this newly minted little family moved in together in Copenhagen. Life in Denmark consisted of school for myself and work for Mum and Dad. There were several camping trips around Denmark and Norway where Roy and Anita and sometimes my auntie Norrin would come along. One trip we all crammed into a green Austin minivan piled high with tent and camping gear. How that little car managed 2 adults, 3 kids and all that gear I will never know. But we did it. One of these camping adventures, Roy and I decided to gang up on younger sister Anita and build a bigger and better lean-to. So Dad came over and teamed up with Anita to build one twice as grand. That taught us a lesson for sure. And that was also my first exposure to his sense of fair play, which he always carried with him throughout his life. Excuse me. After a couple of years, talk started about joining Uncle Jan Sorlie and family in Australia. So after much discussion and preparations, our family temporarily relocated to Melbourne, the original plan being to return to Norway after 5 years. Dad immediately found work. His first job was a mobile service technician for a refrigeration company, Pioneer Refrigeration. He moved through various positions until he settled at Liner Services on the docks, looking after refrigerated shipping containers. Liner Services is where he met several lifelong friends, including his future brother-in-law Graham. Several years later, he decided he wanted to become a trade teacher, so he did a teaching degree and finally became a lecturer at RMIT. He'd found a job that he truly loved. Dad's brother, Uncle Jan and family, had a log cabin in the mountains near Omeo. This became a favourite holiday destination where many happy family holidays were spent. Fishing, swimming, motorbike riding, fishing, hiking, fishing, camping, and did I mention fishing? Dad and Uncle Jan would be up at the crack of dawn and return in the afternoon, and there was always plenty of fish, especially in Uncle Jan's bag. Because he knew all the secret fishing holes. Sadly, the cabin was lost in the 2003 bushfires, but the plot of land has remained with Uncle Jan's family still to this day. During the 70s in Melbourne, our family moved many times, from Springvale to Mount Eliza to Elwood to Mooroolbark and finally to Canterbury. Then in 1978, it was time for me to leave the nest and relocate to Sydney with work. So Mum and Dad embarked on a new business venture, relocating to Vanuatu to own and run a mixed business consisting of refrigeration installation and service, art shop, picture framing, petrol station and chicken takeaway. It's such an obvious combination of related endeavours, don't you think? Dad's leisure time activities included squash and a newfound passion for scuba diving in the beautiful clear waters of the Pacific. Their South Sea adventure lasted 3.5 years and came to an end due to Vanuatu's independence from Britain and France, which resulted in reduced tourism, which reduced business. They returned to Australia and started their nomadic period, with short stints in Melbourne, Sydney, Coffs Harbour, a few years in Brisbane before finally purchasing 20 acres in Warwick, where they initially built a small cabin in which to live, then built their larger home. Whilst living in Brisbane and Warwick, they became very involved with the Norwegian Club and Ethnic Radio, where they funded and hosted a weekly program which included competitions and requests, etc. Dad was able to work as a trade teacher again and helped to implement distance education for the trade schools. He also played a lot of golf whilst in Queensland, lot less active than squash, I suppose, in the humid climate. As many of their friends from Melbourne ended up relocating to Queensland, they also had a wide circle of new and old friends and would host regular club and private functions over weekends at the Warwick property. Fast forward to 1989, when Mum and Dad travelled to Perth for the wedding of Alison and myself. They were warmly welcomed by Alison's family and took the opportunity to look around and liked what they saw. So after the birth of Jessica in 1995, they decided to uproot yet again and relocate to Western Australia, to a little town south of Perth called Pinjarra. As usual, Dad had no problem finding work. This time he was back on the road working on cool room installations, and after a time he started teaching again at the Carlisle TAFE in Perth. During the years in Pinjarra, many happy times were spent with the grandkids, visiting regularly, enjoying many birthday and Christmas celebrations together. In Pinjarra, there was a neighbourhood Santa Claus that would drive around all the streets handing out presents to the kids. Do you two remember that? What? Yep. The Dad would gee up the grandkids and they would hear the Santa bell getting closer and closer until their excitement was almost unpalpable. I think he gave them red cordial as well, just to make sure the job was done properly. Anyway, it was also in Pinjarra where Dad started indulging his passion for furniture making, spending many happy hours out in the large workshop crafting all sorts of pieces, including chests of drawers, bookshelves, display cabinets, tables, etc. This was certainly a hobby he threw himself into wholeheartedly. He was especially pleased to sell some pieces as well. After a few years, there was another relocation, this time to the Perth suburb of Balladura, into Alison's and my house as we temporarily relocated to Melbourne for work reasons, which, as usual, became permanent, triggering yet another move back to Victoria, where they settled in Mount Evelyn. This was a lovely place on a large block and came with chickens and some very large and very dangerous looking trees, which gave Mum sleepless nights and eventually needed to be cut down. Being back in Melbourne gave Dad the opportunity to again return to his favourite job of teaching, travelling to Box Hill TAFE every day. After some time, he was asked to head up a team providing certification training for the new refrigerant, allowing tradesmen to update their qualifications to deal with the new regulations accompanying this product. During this time, Dad made a solo trip back to Norway in June 2006 to spend some time with Roy and Anita and to meet his new Norwegian grandchildren. Whilst he was there, he also caught up with many family members and old friends, also travelling north to Vega to visit Mum's family. In fact, there were lots of trips back to Norway over the years to reconnect with the family, including one 6-month-long trip in 1996 for the purpose of extensive family tracing. Then towards the end of 2009, several decisions needed to be made. The Mount Evelyn property was proving to be quite the maintenance burden, and Dad also needed to start thinking about retirement as he was now nearing 73 years of age. I thought about it at 60. Thus the Mount Evelyn property was replaced by a smaller and easier to manage property in Mornington. Retirement did not come easy, however, as he was a man who thrived on his work, so he kept busy as much as he could with projects around the house, tinkering in the garage and keeping fit by swimming at the Hastings pool twice a week. There were also semi-regular Friday evening happy hour gatherings with the neighbours, who grew quite close during their years in Mornington, and I thank those of them that are here today. Dad underwent a hip replacement operation in order to alleviate worsening issues, but unfortunately the operation was not successful. In fact, his situation became worse, but being the stoic man he was, he wanted to live life as normal. So Mum and Dad travelled when they had the opportunity, favourite destinations being the previously mentioned Omeo and also New Caledonia, where I guess the heat alleviated some of the issues. Sometime around the mid-2010s, it was becoming evident that Dad's short-term memory was starting to fail him. But once you got him talking about his youth and the school days and his trips to sea in the Merchant Navy, his eyes would sparkle whilst he regaled us with tales of his adventures and exploits, whilst sharing a couple of akavits as well, I might add. The last big gathering we had for Dad was to celebrate his 80th birthday in January 2017. Lots of family and friends attended the occasion, and he thoroughly enjoyed being fussed over. In fact, he always enjoyed being the centre of attention with that twinkle in his eye. It's a lifelong thing, I think. By the end of 2018, it was clear the Mornington property was also becoming a maintenance challenge. So Mum and Dad downsized into a lifestyle village in Hastings in April 2019. A few months later, Dad's needs required that he relocate into specialist care, initially in Mornington and later to the Bay's Aged Care in Hastings. This was to be the final chapter of a long and colourful life. With Dad, I was doing so well.
You were.
With Dad drawing his last breath on Tuesday morning, the 14th of June, passing away in a fuss-free, dignified manner, just like he lived his life. Our family would like to thank the staff and carers at the base who were able to engage with and care for Dad in such a loving way. It does give us comfort knowing he received such wonderful care. The management at the base also went above and beyond during COVID, providing access for Mum to be by Dad's side as much as possible. Mum and I would also like to especially thank Alison and Kirsty for amazing support during these last couple of weeks, during our difficult times. Thus, we close the book on the life of this wonderful man with the ready smile and cheeky twinkle in his eye. A man loved by many, yet also a very private man who loved nothing more than spending time with his family and friends, especially his grandchildren whenever he could. Dad is survived by his wife Alma, his children Jan Eric, Roy and Anita, his grandchildren Kirsty, Leif, Christina, Jessica, Daniel and Marie, and last but not least, his great-grandson Tor. Rest in peace, Dad. You will forever be in our hearts and our thoughts.
Thank you, Jan Erik and Alison. Thank you. To share a tribute sent from the Calvo family in Norway, I'd now like to invite Alma to speak, to be followed by Jessica to share a short poem written by her grandfather, Torgils. But first, Alma.
This one is from my niece in Norway. She is the oldest daughter of sister number 2. Dear Uncle Torgils, I just want to say a few words. When my mum and I visited Perth in 1998-99, you took us on some fantastic trips from Perth to Albany, Esperance to Dundas, Norseman and across the Nullarbor in 42 degrees temperature. Further to Port Lincoln, Adelaide, Mount Gambier and on to Melbourne. You being the perfect guide, finding the most unusual and strange places to stay, some a little worse for wear, not to mention names, but forever ingrained in our memory. We ended the days usually with a swim and takeaway for dinner, that's the easiest, and a few wines to keep us warm. Believe it or not, the nights could be quite cold, even being December. And it also turned out to be a few rainy nights, in particular one night, and guess who did not need a shower the next morning? Well, that's in fact is a joke, but I was totally soaked, says Susan. In 2008, we were back in Australia, this time with my little daughter Vilde, and you, Uncle Torgils and Vilde, found one another, played Vikings in the cold water of Port Phillip Bay when the rest of us shivered on the beach. This is only a couple of great memories about you, Uncle, but I could easily continue. There is so much I like to say. I am forever grateful that you have been a big part of my life and that I will treasure forever. Unfortunately, the last years have been missed, but we have been kept up to date with the ups and downs. We will never forget the glint in your eyes and your cheeky smile. You were a big part of our family up here in the north of Norway, and I speak on behalf of the whole family. We all loved you. Now you are at peace, no more suffering, so rest in peace.
You will forever be in our hearts. On behalf of the Vega and Northern Norway family, love, Susan.
That's it. Thank you.
That's it.
I have a poem written by Torgils Louis, written in 1977, called The Shack. Quietness. I am alone in the bush. The sounds of birds singing and of the river which floats past gives a tremendous peace to my mind. Thinking back to yesterday, being in the city, heavy traffic, people talking, noisy machines and work. Thanks to somebody, I've escaped into a peaceful world, escaping the civilization to get away to my own little shack, well hidden in the bush where no one travels. Sitting back on the veranda and looking around me, I find only nature. Glancing across to the empty kennel where my dog used to live, some sadness enters me. I can recall the time we used to play in the bush together. The barking from the dog broke the quietness and made the birds fly away, shrieking in protectiveness over the disturbance. But he is gone now, and it's only me left with the memories. Looking at the stack of firewood reminds me to cut some more before winter sets in. Then the sun breaks through the clouds, and the rays of light give me a greater impact of quietness, which I accept gratefully. Suddenly, a branch breaks in the bush, turning my head into the direction of the sounds. Who is coming? Then I settle down again. A kangaroo is standing there, looking towards the shack, but he doesn't run. He is familiar with his surroundings. Standing there for a while, he then starts to hop across the open area in front of the shack. His legs make a hissing sound in the long grass, and I see him disappear into the bush, and with him, the noise. Again, I am alone.
Thank you, Alma and Jessica. Thank you. Alma chose the following extract of a poem from Khalil Gibran, who was one of Torgils' favourite writers, and has asked Kirsty to read it and share it with you in loving memory of her grandfather, Torgils. Kirsty.
Farewell to you and the youth I've spent with you. It was but yesterday we met in a dream. You have sung to me in my aloneness, and I of your longings have built a tower in the sky. But now our sleep has fled, and our dream is over, and it is no longer dawn. The noontide is upon us, and our half-waking has turned to fuller day, and we must part. If in the twilight of memory we should meet once more, we shall speak again together, and you shall sing to me a deeper song. And if our hands should meet in another dream, we shall build another tower in the sky.
Thank you, Kirsty. Thank you. Like the candle lit here for Torgils today, its warmth offers a simile for each of us in our lives. It's a light for a time, it grows stronger and brighter, and like Torgils' presence and warm smile with you, it shines out into the world around us. And then after a while, sometimes longer, sometimes shorter, as the wick burns down and the wax melts away, the flame dwindles, finally goes out, and life is over. So to light one candle from another can be to signify the time we shared, the memories that we created together. It's light like the warmth of his kindness, his love, his friendship, his generosity, and the good times, the laughter, the life lessons that you shared, and the journeys and the unique experiences that you experienced together. So now to each light a candle in loving memory of Torgils on behalf of everyone here, watching in later via the link, and of course sending their good wishes. I'd like to invite the following. On behalf of the Thorne family in Western Australia, Alison. Come forward, Alison. And for the Calvo family in Vega, Jessica. And for the Calvo family in Alisund, Alma. Ålesund. My Norwegian's not very good, I'm sorry. For the Sorlie family of Norway, Leif. And on behalf of all the friends in Queensland, Kirsty. And on behalf of the extended Australian Sorlie family, Ellen. And to light a candle for Torgils on behalf of the Dunderdale family, Alicia. As the candles burn, as you listen to this music, please take these moments to generate your own good wishes and aspirations for Torgils, whatever his journey may be. Thank you. When meeting with Alma and Jan Erik a few days back as we talked through the details for this service this afternoon, they spoke with fond laughter. There were stories and there were a few tears of the truly good-hearted man Torgils was. the things that he did, that he enjoyed, was passionate about, as has been spoken of, his character, his unique ways, his work life and friendships, his love for you, his family, his view of the world and his own place in it, and what he might have said of his life, if asked, about which Jan Erik said, I can sum it up in 3 words: what a ride. Torgils lived a wonderful life. He was always a very social person, enjoyed being the centre of attention, as Jan Erik mentioned, and no matter where he was, Torgils was always talking with people, enjoying your company. He loved kids who were always so easily drawn to him, and Torgils loved and was very proud of each of his grandkids, Kirsty, Leif Erik, Christina, Jessica, Daniel and Marie, and great-grandson Tor. And they each were Torgils. Here and in Norway, they're far and oldefar. That was Torgils Sorlie, his 85 years and his story, and the times he generously shared with each of you. So now, with all that's been spoken of in mind, and your own memories and good wishes for him, please take these next 8 minutes and 3 short songs to remember Torgils and your unique connection as you watch these following images of moments that have been captured from across his lifetime.
Strangers in the night, exchanging glances, wandering in the night. What were the chances we'd be sharing love before the night was through? Something in your eyes was so inviting, something in your smile was so exciting, something in my heart told me I must have you. Strangers in the night, 2 lonely people, we were strangers in the night, up to the moment when we said our first hello. Little did we know, love was just a glance away, a warm embracing dance away. And ever since that night, we've been together, lovers at first sight, in love forever. It turned out so right for strangers in the night. Just a glance away, a warm embracing dance away. Ever since that night, we've been together, lovers at first sight, in love forever. It turned out so right for strangers in the night.
How I love to hear the organ in the chapel in the moonlight, while we're strolling down the aisle where roses entwine. How I love to hear you whisper in the chapel in the moonlight, that the love light in your eyes forever will shine. Till the roses turn to ashes down. How I love to hear the choir in the chapel in the moonlight as they sing, oh, promise me forever be mine. Till the organ turns to rust, till the moonlight turns to dark. How I love to hear the choir in the chapel in the moonlight as they sing, oh, promise me forever be mine.
Somewhere beyond the sea, somewhere waiting for me, my lover stands on golden sands and watches the ships that go sailing. Somewhere beyond the sea, she's there watching for me. If I could fly like birds on high, then straight to her arms I'd go sailing. It's far beyond the star, it's near beyond the moon. I know beyond a doubt my heart will lead me there soon. We'll meet beyond the shore, we'll kiss just as before. Happy we'll be beyond the sea, and never again I'll go sailing. Beyond the shore, we'll kiss just as before. Happy we'll be beyond the sea, and never again I'll go sailing. No more sailing, so long sailing, bye-bye.
I think a very big hand for Torgils. To share a second extract from the writings of Khalil Gibran, I'd like to ask Leif to read Out of My Deeper Heart. Leif.
Out of my deeper heart a bird rose and flew skywards. Higher and higher did it rise, yet larger and larger did it grow. At first, it was but like a swallow, then a lark, then an eagle, then as vast as a spring cloud, and then it filled the starry heavens. Out of my heart a bird flew skywards, and it waxed larger as it flew, yet it has not left my heart.
Thank you, Leif. And to share a final tribute and some things that come to mind when thinking of Torgils, I'd like to invite the former Consul General of Norwegian Consulate in Melbourne and current Vice President of the Friends of Norway, Mr. Tom Paulson, to speak. Tom.
Good afternoon. My name is Tom Paulson, and I represent today Friends of Norway, the Norwegian club in Melbourne and Victoria. Our condolences to Alma and the whole family on the passing of Torgils. But what wonderful photo memories. I thought they were absolutely fantastic. And Torgils, as I knew him, was a typical Norwegian, proud of his heritage, full of nationalistic feelings, having looked after the Norwegian community in Queensland for some time. He came to Melbourne and did a great job for the club during his presidency between 2006 and 2009. Torgils excelled in this position, and he was really well liked and respected. And he was firm but fair, but his hands were never far away from the wooden club he used to keep committee members concentrating on whatever item they were discussing. Mind you, he had a steady hand and supporter in Alma. Torgils left the club in a much improved state, and for that we are extremely grateful. And for those of you who have experienced a traditional celebration of the Norwegian National Day at the Swedish church or even back in Norway, would know what a wonderful presentation it is of Norwegian customs and enthusiasm, and how we are all proud being part of the Norwegian and Australian culture. I never got to be president like Torgils, but a vice president of Friends of Norway is pretty good to me. And in my 22 years serving as Consul General of Norway in Melbourne, I saw quite a lot of Torgils. But today, Friends of Norway, and I know I have the whole Norwegian community in Melbourne behind me, Torgils are in our thoughts, and we want to send him our last greetings and farewell. Rest in peace.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you. It was once said of life and of all things, what's been gathered will be dispersed, what's been accumulated will be exhausted, what has been built up will collapse, and what is born will one day die. In the days to follow, when memories of Torgils come to mind in thoughts or conversations, maybe over a family meal together, remembering things that he said or did which you laughed about or enjoyed, or maybe that warm twinkle in his eye, or just simply in those quiet moments, will be those precious chances to smile inside and out, and to remember the good things that his kindness, his intelligence, his warm presence, hard work, and all which Torgils generously brought into the world. And may each of his good qualities, his kind actions, both seen and unseen, along with each of your own heartfelt good wishes, go with him and be shared with you and all who his life touched, brought benefit, happiness, and the warmth of his smile. Alma and Jan Erik and their family very warmly invite everyone to please join them for refreshments in the function room here at Bunnerong. Of course, time to catch up and share some of your own fond stories together. Now, in reverence to Torgils' life and his passing, I invite all of you who are comfortably able to please stand. Here together this afternoon, and for those later watching via the link, with the very deepest of reverence, of kindness and love, of gratitude, of humility and of compassion, we tenderly and very respectfully say farewell to Torgils Louis Sorlie. And in concluding, what he would have wished and wanted for you all, simply for each of you to be healthy and happy, to look out for and look after each other, and to enjoy all which life brings you. Remember Torgil always with the warmest of smiles. Thank you.
You've given me a true love, and every day I thank you, love.